All right, welcome back to Dusty DIY. Thanks for joining us today. Today we are actually pressing in some wheel bearings inside these wheels that are off of 2016 RZR. The other day I actually pushed the bearings out of here, and I don't have that on recording, but it's the same process pushing them out as it is pushing them back in. Right here we have a press, basically a hydraulic jack that is connected to this metal rack that pushes straight up and down right here with this pin on the bottom, this ram. And by pushing the ram up and down, we push the bearings in and out of any type of a wheel bearing. Doesn't necessarily have to be one of these. I've done multiple ATVs, cars, different things by using this press. It's how we press them in and out. The biggest thing is finding the correct spacers and the correct things to push up and down with on whatever it is you're working on. For example, right here is the front hub off that vehicle, and right here, if you notice, I have the old bearing, which you can see is completely toast. The bearings fell out when I was taking it apart, and I have a new bearing right here. This is a nice bearing. It has a 3-year warranty. I highly suggest paying a little bit more money for a better bearing. Otherwise, you might do this every couple of years, because some of the bearings sold online are not that great, I've noticed. So I buy ones that have some type of warranty. This is a 3-year warranty bearing. All right, so basically what I'm gonna do today, and I'll show you, is I'm gonna take some anti-seize. I always use a lot of anti-seize when working on stuff like this. And I'm going to, first of all, clean that up with some, inside where the bearing goes, I'm going to clean it up with some fine sandpaper, basically some very fine grit, just to clean it up a little. You don't want to rough it up too bad. Just if there's any rusty surfaces, you want to get those off there. Then what I'm going to do is put a little coating of anti-seize in there. It just kind of lubes it up. Once I've cleaned that up, I've already cleaned these up. I wiped them out, cleaned them up a little. As you can see, I lube that up with anti-seize where that bearing's going to slide in there. It helps to lube it up. Basically, you do the same thing in taking them off. The main thing that holds these in is a snap ring right here. If you notice, there's a snap ring groove. So there's a snap ring, and I'll show you. We'll put the snap rings in at the end, but you take the snap ring out, and then you find a way to sit this up with some kind of a spacer. Maybe like use a lot of huge sockets, or maybe even a pipe spacer, something to sit this on. Of course, on a lot of these you have different plates, different weights, different spacers, and what you're doing is you're going to find a spacer that fits perfect right inside of there. I actually used a big socket I had when I pushed them out. It's got to fit perfect, and it's got to push on the bearing, and basically you just sit that where it has room to come out the bottom and push it down. And if it's not hitting anything, you'll be able to keep pressing this down. You have to set this up so that you have clearance and push those out. But today we're just pushing them in, so I'm not going to go into great detail of pushing them out. Pushing them in is the same process, only reversed. So we're going to push these bearings in. So on this particular setup, I can sit up flat right there because it's going to go right up inside against this flange, so I don't have to have anything to push the bearing down in like when I'm taking them out. But I do have to have something to push the new bearing down in that's actually a perfect fit. So what I'll do is I'll use the old bearing. The old bearing is perfect diameter, so a lot of times once you get the bearing out, you can push it in with the old bearing. So I'll set this up. A lot of the time these are set up right here by moving this stand. You can go up or down, or your different spacer plates to adjust your heights of whatever spacers you're using. I know you can get spacer different kits online that might be worth buying that have all the different size spacers and sockets and different things to push things in and out. But today I'm just using a bunch of spare parts that I ran around this old shop. We're going to press these in and press them out. Now the front ones are a little bit different than the rear. They have a nice flat surface. I just got to find something to push them down in. That should be pretty easy. All right, I'm pretty much set up here to press this first bearing in. Just going to show you how it works. I've got the height adjustment on the machine set to where I think is good. You can use like spacer plates to go up or down a little bit. But as you can see, I've got the anti-seize inside the area where the bearing is going to be pushed down into. And I got my new bearing here. Look it over good, make sure it's good. And I believe we're good. And now I'm going to sit it down in there. I'm going to actually use the old bearing to line up perfectly to press down. And then I had to find a little flat piece of metal that will go across the top of the bearing and touch all four sides of it that can push on the flat part of the rod right there. So anyway, I'm all lined up now. It looks like I'm going to be pushing nice and flat down in. So I'm going to turn my hydraulic jack so it goes ahead and pumps. And I got to get the lever to go ahead and jack the thing. Okay, here we go. We're going to go ahead and start pressing the bearing down in. Basically, it's just pushing that bearing straight down in. If you're on an angle, it's not a good thing. If you notice, it's going pretty easy. Sometimes they get cockeyed just a little, but I've noticed, especially with the anti-seize lubrication and stuff, like this one, it's going down in really well. So the problem with using the bearing is sometimes it pushes the very edge of the old bearing in just a little, but usually you can take a hammer or a pair of pliers or something and just knock it free. You'll want to press down until you'll feel when it hits, it'll get tight right there. So now that it's tight, put a little pressure on it, should be down. Go ahead and release the jack. Pull out my spacer. Like I said, now the other bearing pressed in there just barely. All right, I just went and grabbed a hammer and a little chisel. I just tapped the old bearing through the bottom of the top there, and it just popped right out. So as you can see, this one's ready for the snap ring. While I have it set up right here, I'll go ahead and press the other front. The front is different than the rear. Then we'll get set up for the back after that. All right, after searching around for a few spacers, if you notice, this is the back wheel assembly for the 2016 RZR. Now, if you notice, it's on quite an angle. So when I sit that down, the plane is not flat. So I gotta get that sitting flat. So what I did was I moved the plates around, readjusted the press a little bit. But what I went and found was some chunks of plywood right here. So I kind of messed around with it for a minute and got it where if I shim it up with these three little pieces of plywood, I could get it so that my plane where I'm pressing down, I'm pressing straight flat. Looks like it's, if I mess around with it, it's pretty flat to the press right here, okay? Now I'm gonna do the same thing. Here's my new wheel bearing. I went ahead and put the anti-seize in that end of it, set my new one there. Gonna go ahead and use the old one. That works really good. Line it up just perfect right there. And I gotta position this directly under the press. Now, I'm still just using a flat piece of C-channel right here that pushes on all four sides of that old bearing. Now I should be able just to press down. It's all about adjusting it to the right height and pushing that bearing in with this press, pushing it straight in. Okay, so far looking good. Looks like it's going down in, sliding in pretty well. Okay, it's pressing down in nicely. I want to push it all the way down in because I got to get that snap ring in the groove also. So feels like it bottomed out right there. Don't want to go too much further than when the press tightens up. Go ahead and release my jack. And that one didn't press the old bearing in. So as you can see, it pushed the anti-seize out a little on the bottom, but it pressed that bearing in perfectly. So go ahead and press the last one. All right, as you could see on that last time lapse, I got that last one pressed in, but I had to go ahead and use the plate and readjust. And the main thing is to make sure the top of your place you're pressing the bearings is parallel to the bottom of the press. And as you push that down, you want to push it straight down. If it starts going a little bit of an angle, you want to readjust and make sure it's being pressed down flat. Usually they go right down in, especially when you put a little anti-seize in there. So that bearing's pressed in there. We'll go ahead and put in the snap rings, finish up this video. Okay, here we are back on the workbench. We got all 4 of our bearings pressed in. Here's a set, a back and a front. You can see we have those pressed in like that. This particular one right here is the front, and these are what the snap rings look like. Now most bearings just have a snap ring on one side or the other. You got to pull those out, and then you find basically a socket or a piece of pipe or something and push directly down, and you push those bearings out the same way they went back in. They do make special pressing tools if you want to buy them specific to the machine. I know Polaris sells one that fits right in these 3 notches. I've never needed it. I've always just used some old sockets that we have that push them in or out. Then you're just going to take a pair of snap ring pliers and go ahead and put the ring back in the groove. Alright, once that's snapped in there, then you're good to go. You can go ahead and assemble your vehicle. Do the same process to the front. Gonna snap the ring back in there, and that holds your bearing in. Alright, thanks for joining in today on Dusty DIY. We went ahead and pressed these bearings back in. It's just as easy to press them out as it was to press them in with the right tools. You have to have a press and the proper spacers. If you have any comments or questions, go ahead and leave those if you like. And please like and subscribe to Dusty DIY.